73% of women are looking to change careers.
You get to face your weaknesses, the parts of you that you don't know very well, and it's very scary.
As women, we sort of don't give credit to ourselves of how much we're capable of doing.
I was this super brave or had any superpower. All I did was do my thing.
Yeah.
You know?
I really want this. I really want to make it work. I have no idea how. But step by step, I'm going to start.
Welcome to the She Word, Women in Business, conversations that women rarely have, but really should. I'm your host, Helen Chorley, investment banker turned angel investor, and this is the all-new Women in Business series. So whether you are an employee, a boss, an entrepreneur, you work from home, there will be something in this mini-series for you, I assure you. Today's topic is reinventing yourself. We have three wonderful guests who have pivoted in their career, and we're going to hear their fascinating stories. But before we do that, if you are an existing She Word fan, thank you so much. Thank you for watching and sharing and commenting. If you are new here, welcome. If you want to be kept informed of all our new series and episodes, please follow us, like, share, subscribe across all our channels: Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and of course, YouTube. And if you are one of our Patreon subscribers, a special thank you to you. Just by being a subscriber, you are making a difference to the lives of women who need guidance and therapy in our partnership with the Richmond Foundation. And I'm so genuinely excited about today's episode because we have three wonderful ladies with us today who have fascinating stories. They started out on one career path and had success there, and at some point they decided to switch. So I can't wait for you to hear more about that. And we are going to introduce them right now. So our first guest is Captain Iona Muscat. Welcome.
Hello.
She is driven by a fascination with history. She obtained a first degree in archaeology in 2008 and a master's degree in the same field in 2012, both from the University of Malta. As a postgraduate, she worked on a number of projects as a freelance archaeologist. But what does she do now? Her title may give you a little hint. She is passionate about so many things, but mostly archaeology, aviation, music, art, and of course, books. A real polymath. Welcome, Iona.
Thank you so much, Helen. Nice to be here with all these fantastic women and, of course, this great setting. Thank you.
Pleasure. I can't wait to tell your story. Our next guest started out her career in the medical industry. As a podiatrist, she even became the Secretary General of the International Federation of Podiatrists. But she has taken a very different path, which now focuses on enhancing natural beauty and boosting confidence. We'll see what that is shortly. She is passionate about creativity and women in business, amongst other things. Ivon, welcome.
Hello, Helen. Thank you for having me.
And our final guest is Olivia from Ethical Living. She is a warranted professional, we'll tell you what in a minute, who swapped her corporate life for the self-employed route by retraining at the age of 39. She now focuses on supporting clients one-to-one to achieve their goals and walk the healing journey. And we're going to go into how exactly she does that. She is passionate about empowering clients through her work, adopting a practical approach through honest and candid conversations and insights. Welcome, Olivia.
Thank you, Helen, for having me.
But let's give some context around this first. The stats for this show are so interesting. According to a survey of 1,500 women by In Her Sight, 73% of women are looking to change careers, a figure up 28% on the previous year. The reasons women want to change careers are varied, as you would expect, with the top three reasons being: one, The need for more pay, that's 32% of women. It would appear women see a career change as their best chance at better compensation. 2, the desire to find a career with a mission they believe in, that's 16% of respondees. So purpose is really important to us. And 3, something I relate to, burnout, 13% of the women. And we actually have an episode dedicated to that. So watch out for that and check it out because that's a corker. In terms of barriers, women in that same survey said a lack of connections in the fields they hope to pursue is the number one barrier standing in their way of their career change. Second is a lack of education required to make that change. And third is the inability to take a potential pay cut that the career change would require. 24% of women say the ability to afford the education required to change careers would make them more likely to take that leap. So some really interesting stats to kick off there, ladies. Everybody nodding. So we're going to dive into all of that. But first, I know our listeners and viewers are going to be sat on the edge of their seat waiting to hear all your stories. So, Iona, we didn't share what exactly you do now, but the captain gives a little hint, doesn't it? Take us back, though. You started out in archaeology. That's what your degree in. How did your career progress from there?
For me, at least, it's always been about what I wanted to do, what I felt like I should do, because I wanted to do it, you know? So
Yeah.
this is not to go against your statistics, of course, but to me, it always was a matter of what I wanted to pursue in terms of what would make me happy, what would make my life more interesting, perhaps. And I did imagine myself telling other people when they asked, I always felt, you know, archaeology is something so cool. I mean, I might not be, you know, it might not be on the menu for a lot of people because it's, you know, it tends to be associated with old things or very, very archaic things. But to me, it was something very exciting to be doing, unearthing very old items, very old objects, artifacts. The fact of the unknown, you know, there was always something which enticed me towards
You had
it.
that passion for it.
Yes, and I must admit, I still do.
Yeah.
I still have it. I still love to be an archaeologist. I still do it to some extent.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that the more you grow into it, first of all, it's a very demanding subject because you need to keep abreast because it changes. When you are a professional, after all, you have to you know, keep reading the books, keep attending the public lectures, which I do, not as much as I would love to, but you do have to do it because then otherwise it becomes something unknown, and I do not want to lose that part of me, if I may, you know.
Yeah.
So yes, I worked as a curator for Heritage Malta for 3 years. I worked as a curator for prehistoric sites. And I was very, very proud to be, you know, managing certain sites. We had UNESCO World Heritage Sites under our care, so it was a huge responsibility. But you're never alone in these jobs, are you? So it's always very, you know, you feel like you're part of a team. You are surrounded by fantastic individuals. So I really had absolutely no reason to leave.
So you weren't unhappy in your choice?
I was not the least bit unhappy. I was very happy. I had fantastic colleagues, and it's something that I knew especially because I had some freelance experience in archaeology as well, which I loved, but I always thought I would rather settle for, you know, like a more I don't know what to call it, but I would say a securer job. But it's not for security either. It's the fact that you're working with other colleagues. Freelance was a bit of a lonesome approach to archaeology, and it's not the best way to do archaeology, I would say, you know, because when you're sharing the desk with other colleagues of yours who have fantastic minds and you can discuss, you can share, you can research together. That's something which I really miss, you know?
Yeah, that collaboration.
Yes. So, as I said, I was doing it. I was very happy doing it. So I had absolutely no reason to, ditch it. But then when opportunities come your way and you feel like you get that calling, you always have two options. You can either heed to those callings and say, okay, maybe this is a sign that I should be changing path for a bit. Or you can say, listen, I'm just happy here. I have a secure job. I have a good career, which, had already started to look very, very good for me. So I said, maybe I should stay put. And mind you, for the people out there who are listening to us, I would really like to drive this home. You don't have to be cool to change, you don't have to yield to the pressure of getting a calling, Sitting right where you are, if it's good, is good enough.
Yeah.
And I think it's an important thing to know when you should be grateful and when you are at a good place, which I was.
Yeah.
But knowing me and my character, I was like, thinking about it for very long, and it's something that was unavailable for me for a bit. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say what I do just yet.
Not yet. Let's hold on.
There was this opportunity which presented itself, which had not presented itself to me before because it was bound by a bit of an age limit. And given my studies and my other career being pursued, for a while, I had gone beyond that age limit. So I said, maybe this is not for me, But then all of a sudden, the planets aligned, and this age limit was no longer there. It was put a little bit on my side, So I had this little bit of room where I could say, okay, I'm either going to do this or I'm not. And I decided to go for it.
Woohoo.
What else? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I should go on.
Absolutely. Let's go there then. So this window opened up to you. You are very happy in your career.
I was.
Really, so that it's not a choice of desperation or getting away from anything. But I love what you'd say about there was this calling.
Yes.
And then how beautifully the planets aligned and gave you this opportunity.
Yes.
So what did you do and what do you do now? I feel like we should have a drum roll.
Well, it is a bit of a calling because as I was perhaps going to say earlier, it's not something that might be for everyone, Well, every job is not for everyone, I would say. But yes, there was an opening, and they advertised it in this way because the age limit had been extended that very year for the first time after so long for joining the army, the military, basically the Armed Forces of Malta as a cadet. Mm-hmm. And I checked my qualifications, I checked my records, I made sure I had everything in line, and I said, yes, I do have, what the papers say. I didn't know whether I had what it takes yet to become an officer. But I said, yes, I'm going to apply for this, see if I get it.
Yeah.
And from then on, I never looked back really because I wasn't even granted the time to look back because it was a very long and winding road, but it was a very satisfactory one. Well, a rewarding one even, So when the applications were out, I was getting myself ready for this massive career change, but nothing really prepares you for military cadetship. And believe you me, during this cadetship, I asked myself 101 times whether I'm up for this, whether I really should be doing this, because I was so good where I was before, And I did ask myself, why on earth did I choose to put myself through this? Because it was a very, very difficult time. It's a challenging time, and it was intended that way because, of course, it is part of the military process to have to face a little bit of pressure, So that's when I had to relocate to Ireland because the military cadetship is split up in two. In Malta, you get the local training first, and then you move on to a military academy abroad. You don't really get a choice where to go. So, that's even something else to add to the pressure perhaps and to the uncertainty. And that's where you get to spend, in my case, it was 17 months and a bit of, very, very intense, yes, very intense. I was going to say daunting at first, but I don't want, it's not something to be disheartened about. It's just that you have to go through it, That is how I successfully approached it, I would say. So yes, I got my military certificate. I was allowed to call myself an officer after a while. I was awarded the grade of a second lieutenant. Then I started to pursue my career locally. So then at some point you realize that it's all behind you now and you can come back home and you can start working as a military officer. And it was a very nice experience because I got posted to the AFM military training school. So it was a bit like a school setting, which was, it was a little bit of the best of both worlds for me, because there was the academic aspect of it, where you're teaching people, where you are, getting these people to leave their civilian lives behind and then sort of help them through the military process, which can be, as I said, daunting to a lot of people.
And you've been through it yourself. So
exactly, so you can understand much better, of course. And the fact that you are part of the successful stories in there is really a rewarding experience.
But you didn't stop there, did you?
I didn't, because I had no way of knowing at the time. But after a while, it does get a little bit sort of not run-of-the-mill, but yes, a little bit run-of-the-mill. So I was looking on perhaps asking for, a bit of a change, which is very, very possible, and it's also very normal in the Armed Forces of Malta. That's the way it works. You don't rust in the same place for a lot of time. Right. We tend to get moved around a lot, which is part of the military process. Uh-huh. But then there was this call for ab initio pilots, which basically allowed for people who already worked in the Armed Forces of Malta, but who had no prior experience relating to aviation at all. That is why it was ab initio, so it's basically starting from scratch, and they were allowing these people to apply for a whole course leading to becoming a fully fledged pilot, basically.
So ab initio means you don't need any previous experience.
Yes, there was a set of qualifications which you needed to have, of course, which had to do with general education standards. But yes, there was no particular prior experience relating to aviation that was required, and it was a golden opportunity for me, because I said whether I want to do it or not is not even the issue yet. This is already telling me I can do it, the fact that they were not after any aviation.
So it's kind of like the stars aligned again for you.
They did. And that was another moment when I said, okay, I'm going to sit myself down, ask myself whether I want to do this, because I know it was going to be a very big change. First of all, I had never done anything related to this before. So I didn't even know whether I was going to be a good pilot in the end, And I also knew, because I had, of course, an idea, being already a member of the Armed Forces of Malta, that this was going to be a change from the administrative field towards the operational field, which is, of course, a different kettle of fish. So I brought myself to think a lot about it, and I tried to be as realistic as possible with the very little knowledge that I had. And I said, okay, maybe it's time to take the leap again. And here we are today.
And you did. And so you were the first, and am I right, the only female helicopter pilot in the Armed Forces?
Yes. There was a female aeroplane pilot relatively long ago, compared to, we all know how military careers work. It's basically 25 years of service, so we don't get to keep a lot of knowledge, unfortunately. There's a lot that is sort of gone after a while simply because we end our service. But no, before me there were no female helicopter pilots. I'm not even sure I can say it myself. So yes, I'm the first woman to be a helicopter pilot, and at the moment I'm the only woman pilot in the Armed Forces of Malta.
Wow. I mean, that honestly is just incredible. Talk about groundbreaking.
Thank
wow.
you.
And you're so humble with it as well.
I think you have to be, because it really is a matter of, just happening to be there at the right place at the right time. Well, right. I'm not even sure we can call it the right time, because had there been other women, it would have been even better,
Yeah.
So, but yes, for some reason, that's how it was meant to be. And unfortunately, because I must say, unfortunately, there are no women who have taken this leap before me, with me. So I'm alone at the moment. But other than that, really and truly, it was never really an alone thing,
Yeah.
I've always done really well with my colleagues who are men, yes, who happen to be men. But, what do you do about it, really? It doesn't... When you say it, it sounds a lot more dramatic and a lot more... it's a bit mystified in people's heads, I would say.
Yeah.
But really and truly, I would have gone on had there been other women. As I said, it would
Yeah.
have been, the more the merrier. But as it happened, no, there were not other women, but here we are anyway, so...
Telling your story, and I just know there's going to be young women out there, and maybe
I
younger,
hope
like
so,
listening and being
yes.
inspired by your story. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
And Ivon.
Hello.
So in Iona's story, there's a lot of talk of luck. She wasn't unhappy. She heard a call in, and you did a very similar, and another enormous shift in your career. You started out as a podiatrist. Please let us into your world.
So I practiced podiatry for 12 years. I did my master's in podiatry. I love podiatry. I still love it to this day, and I still champion my colleagues' work. Like, I'm still part of the Association of Podiatrists. Like, I'm an active member, so I love podiatry. But it was an interesting part. So I mainly worked in the public service, but for a number of years, I was burnt out, and that affected my health quite really badly, in the sense that I couldn't cope with life anymore. Like, I would just go to the work, come home, and literally crash, just stare at the wall. And I think a lot of people who know me were telling me, like, listen, you need to do something about it. The environment is not the right environment for you. You need to change. It goes against your values. And I used to just brush it off. And I thought that they were just saying that to make me feel good, basically. But as I progressed through my career, I changed. I spent 5 years doing assessments for patients who are really poorly when it comes to a vascular and the diabetic aspect of things. That was quite heavy on me, because you see all aspects of society, you see the problems people deal with, the pain they go through, etc. And that was sort of bringing me down. Mm-hmm. Then, just before COVID, I got the opportunity to go into administration, so to help management, etc. And that was something that I always wanted to do, because I like it, And I took the call. I said, it's a change, maybe it will help me, blah, blah. And I spent 2.5 years there. We went through COVID. It was very interesting. I learned a lot. But again, the symptoms started coming back. Right. Like, there's something wrong, And so after years and years of my husband saying, listen, I will support you in whatever you do, even if you stop your job, just try something different. And I always had it at the back of my mind, like, should I study something else? But I felt like I didn't have the energy to go through studying and working at the same time. I had already done it in the past, and I felt like it will take too much out of me. So, and I was like, what should I study? What should I do? Like, I am interested in so many things.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
what will I choose? And I didn't want to study something and then realize, like, oh, it wasn't for me, you know? So my husband, as a birthday present, gave me some coaching sessions, which helped me, like, reflect a lot. I reflected a lot. This was, I'm saying, like, 3 years ago. It helped me reflect a lot on my values, and it helped me open my eyes to what I really want as a person, because I had lost that in the midst of not being okay with myself and not being healthy. You sort of lose who you are. I became someone who, like, I always loved dressing up. Now it doesn't matter, you know. I lost myself. So that helped me sort of sit down with myself and think. And like, I had colleagues of my husband, people who don't know me, telling me, like, I think you should take a break, like, take a year off and see what you want to do, because you are so burnt out, you cannot see it. And I had planned it, but then, like, 2 months before, I had to put my resignation in June, and in April, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, and someone later asked me, like, wasn't it scary to leave? And I think the shift was, this is what I told them, the shift was, it was scarier to stay than to leap into the unknown. Because it had become really bad. Like, I wake up in the morning crying, I'm not going to beat around the bush. Like, it had become a nightmare. So I said, I'd rather, like, leap into the unknown. I don't know what I'm doing, and see from there. Worst case scenario, I'll find a job, I'll find something else, I'll figure it out. So yeah, that is what I did. I handed out my resignation without a backup plan. Thank God I have a husband who backs me up. Of course, I can do that. I know that I can do that because I have people who help me. But it was still scary, you know, you're depending on someone else, you're depending on your partner. You might lose a certain sense of pride as well, because I'm not bringing something to the table, a paycheck, although he tells me you bring other things, but
Cool.
you know. So yeah, I spent almost a year not knowing where I was, what I was going to do, and I started to panic a bit, like, how can I not sort of get any ideas, you know? And if, with your permission, I can reveal what I do.
Yes, another drum roll.
So then my brother's wedding came up, and I remember asking the makeup artist whether she can fit us in, like me and my mother, and she told me no, because of the bridal party being big, she couldn't fit us in. And I told my mother, listen, no problem, I'll do our makeup. I've always been the person who does makeup. Like, I remember at the age of 13, 14, like, going out with my friends, I just spend hours with doing makeup, and then I would sleep in it, something you shouldn't do, and wake up with it, like, still flawless. And I said, and I did my makeup and my mother's makeup. And then it sort of dawned on me, something clicked. Like, this is something I really enjoy doing, something that I've enjoyed doing since I was young. Why not pursue a course in it? And yeah, now I'm doing 2 courses. I hopefully graduate in June. So yeah, and I'm starting my makeup business. So yeah.
What if you could start your journey over? Start here and start again there. That's how life works, in a circular way. We understand the importance of circles, and that's why you are at the heart of ours. Find your way to wellness with Browns.
But you're doing more than starting. You've worked on some big projects already, right?
Yeah.
Is she just being humble, Olivia?
It's being too humble, I think.
Yeah,
come on, Ivon,
so
boast,
one
go
of the
for it.
opportunities was to work in X Factor, thanks to
Whoa.
my mentor Diane Nicolage, who like takes care of X Factor, and she gave me the opportunity to work there, which was amazing. It was scary at first because you're going from a student doing one person at a time to going into a show. Like you're literally throwing yourself into the fire.
In at the deep end.
Exactly. But it was an amazing experience because I learned so much. I grew so much more confident in doing makeup and dealing with people, etc. So yeah, it was an amazing experience. It was so exhilarating. Like with podiatry, I used to go 7 hours at work, and it used to drain me. Like with going to X Factor was like 10 hours of just literally standing, and I would go home midnight with my eyes open like till 2 a.m. I can't sleep from the buzz. Yeah.
Buzzing.
Yeah.
So you're very happy
Yeah.
with the changes you've made.
Yeah.
How exciting. And Olivia,
Yes.
so you took the leap from corporate to now working for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You started in HR. Let's go delve into your story.
Older than them too, so we would delve too long.
Well, I'm even older than you, babe.
Don't look it, for sure.
So it will be a longer. I started working when I was 17, and originally I started in the local. It's called Jobs Plus now. It used to be called ETC. That I'm that old. So I've always worked with people and we're trying to help them with finding a job, retrain. And I've always enjoyed that. Then at a point, Malta was joining the EU, and I was part of the team that started up a service here in Malta, which is called EURES. It's all over the EU to help and sustain job mobility, both companies and job seekers, and to be basically the bridge in between to facilitate job mobility within the EU. And then from there, that was my first scary shift because I felt stuck sort of working in a government entity where, of course, it works by certain rules. Innovation, at least at the time, wasn't something that was part of the way our life went on.
I don't think governments in any country are known for innovation.
And I was feeling like I didn't fit anymore. I was very happy there for a very long time. But it was like sort of time to move on. And similar to Ivon, I got to a point where everyone was telling me, are you crazy? You're leaving government? Like it's such a secure job. But security at that point was feeling choking. It was like, I was feeling like it would be scarier to stay because I felt like very similar to Ivon. I didn't have burnout. I wouldn't say I had burnout at that point. I had it later, but not at that point. But I just was waking up day after day, and they all looked the same. And I felt this burning need inside of me to do something. I love learning, and I felt that was a bit stunted at a point. So yes, I left the government, and I went into recruitment first. And I enjoyed it. I worked with so many different companies. You learn so much because at the time when I worked for this company, no one had a specialization. We all did general recruitment,
Right.
Which means you have to learn very fast what the company does, what they need. You need to really, really learn fast because the recruitment did it was also psychologically matched. So there was a psychology approach to it, not just match salary with needs and there you go. We really focused on creating a cultural fit, which you need to get into the psychology of the company and the candidate to be able to do that. And from then on, I wanted to go deeper into HR. I said, okay, recruitment is part of it, but I want to forge a longer term relationship with the people I'm working with. And that's where I shifted into HR, where I spent a good, 12, 15 years working then in total in HR. I did climb the ranks. Mine wasn't such a switch, especially with Iona and, well, even with Ivon. I think in my case, it was more of an evolution, as I see it, into diving deeper and deeper into the human and the psychology side of things.
Yeah.
While I was in HR, I studied for my master's degree in the psychology of work, so it's organization and psychology, and I joined it a lot because I was already doing the job, and I got sort of the theory to supplement that knowledge you get off the ground and from people. And when you mix the two, when you mix the theory with the applied, it's at least I enjoyed it. It's beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. Rewarding.
Yes, very rewarding to see that there is a science to what you're doing. HR still is an area that some companies regard as personnel and very like on the hygiene side of serving like employee files and this thing. So when you understand all the in-depth science, both of the organization and individual, it's fascinating. At least it's fascinating to me, let me put it that way. I spent a bunch of years there, as we said, and I felt limited again. I wanted to be able, because when you're in HR, or at least, I don't know, with me, that was the experience. Employees would feel comfortable talking to me, so you handle everything when you're in HR. And I've worked both in small setups and very large setups. So people come to you with a problem which has a lot to do outside of work, but they are human. So
Yeah.
I am a very big believer in you cannot really separate life and work life. And we are one human being and we carry everything throughout, both ends. And of course you are limited because you have to keep in mind that you are the head of HR or HR manager and you're bound by employment law.
Yeah.
And bound by the company policy. So you might want to do more, but you cannot just decide to do this and that.
You're working within a framework set by the
Yes.
corporate, whatever
Yes,
corporate, yeah.
yes. And there's also the element of discrimination, so I cannot decide to help Ivon more because I feel that her cause is more important than Iona, for example. So these rules are there for a reason that they should be there because there is equal opportunities, there is equal treatment to everyone, and there are policies. Otherwise, it would be chaos. But I felt that needs to go even deeper. So I took it to my therapist at the time, not coaching. And my therapist, I was like, I'm going to leave this job and I'm going to look for another one. And she was like, okay, so as head of HR, what will be different? Then another role. I was like, maybe a different industry that I haven't tried. And she was like, yes, but what will be different? She kept asking me, like, to the point I'm like, can we just let me go apply for some jobs and we get on with this? But then, yes, she was like, but what is exactly that you're looking for? And she got me into a very deep reflexive state. And I realized that what I want is a deeper connection. I want to be able to zoom in more like where the client wants to take it. It would be a client then, not an employee or a candidate anymore. So yes, that's where I realized I feel a bit limited by what I was doing. And so yes, at the age of 39, or I don't know if it was 40 actually, I decided to start studying again while working.
But you did say you love learning, so this all plays into...
exactly, played into it. But then, of course, the hours are what they are in a day. I'm married and I have two kids, so that's also part of my life. And I decided to, can I say what I decided to do then?
Yes, please, another drum roll.
I decided to go for psychotherapy, systemic psychotherapy, which is mostly known as family therapy. And I signed up for this 4-year-long master's, which is great because it has this practical element to it. It's what I wanted. So the first 2 years are mostly focused on theory and working on yourself. The work on yourself continues throughout the 4 years and beyond.
Yeah.
But then in the second and the third and fourth year, there's also the clinical practice on a weekly basis. So it's quite intense as an experience. It's intense because you have to not just study, you need to really work on yourself. And I started the course naively thinking, I've been in therapy for long. I'm very woke and I'm very into personal development. So I thought there was nothing to dig into really and truly. Oh, I was wrong.
Oh,
I was very wrong.
That's not just learning, though. That's very confronting, like emotionally.
Yes.
And oh, wow,
Yes.
that's brave. That's a whole level of brave. I mean, flying helicopters is brave, and this is brave in a different way, right?
Yes, I think they're different.
It's different, but I would say it's the same in a number of ways. It's similar in a number of ways because it makes you feel very exposed
Yes.
to
You
your
feel
weak,
very
to your
vulnerable.
weak or vulnerable
Yes.
parts, you know, and that's very much what I went through in both parts of the military training. As an officer in training and as a pilot in training, you get to face your weaknesses, the parts of you that you don't know very well, and that's very scary, and that's where you have to be a bit brave, I would say.
Yeah, literally
yeah.
looking in the mirror at yourself.
Yes, and that then COVID. I was already studying just before COVID. I think my course started in 2018. Yes, and second year was spent quite a lot on Zoom, which for a therapy course is even more of a nightmare than other other types of teaching and learning. And that's where I decided. I think when COVID hit, I was still working in the corporate world in HR, and it was like a light bulb moment, or very much like Yvonne mentioned. Like the decision was obvious at that point. I want to work for myself. I don't want to be bound anymore with a time frame that someone set out for me.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just I don't know. I'm 45. I don't mind mentioning my age. I've worked long enough in this setting, and I've outgrown it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So there the journey started. I say journey because I didn't just decide to up and leave. At that point, I dropped to part-time hours because I needed to make room for my clinic practice and assignment and family and homeschooling with the COVID nightmare that it was at the time with online lessons. So yes, I dropped to part-time. It was quite a hit, as Yvonne mentioned. I'm also privileged maybe, and it's good to mention that my husband wanted to support at the time. But yes, seeing your paycheck slashed in half when you've been working since you were 17. I've always studied and worked. I've never just studied alone, sort of thing. It's a pinch to your ego, sort of, and you have to like say, okay, I'm ready to accept this help and this support. And then eventually, after I finished the course, I went full-time, self-employed. And I still do HR. That's the thing that evolved with time. I thought I'm going to leave HR behind and just do therapy. But as I started to leave it behind, I realized, wait, I do enjoy HR in a way that I want like to do it. So there I decided to set up my practice, dealing both with coaching, therapy, and also HR advisory with a human-centric approach. So I sort of brought all my areas together. So in my case, that's why I'm saying not a switch. It's more of an evolution of bringing different fields, if you want, together.
But you did make that leap, Olivia, from being in the corporate world to, we've talked about kind of uncertainty with both ladies here, but that leap into to being in charge of your own time, your own money, and stepping into that vulnerability. So that is a major shift. We do actually have an episode on entrepreneurship, but all the ladies on that, I think I'm right in saying, started straight into entrepreneurship, whereas you kind of left behind, you flew the nest from the comfort of that corporate career into the big scary world of now you're doing it on your own for yourself. And yes, you're not reporting to anybody, but there also isn't that support network around you. So how was that shift?
It was scary, very scary. And I felt both excited and scared, because I was excited that finally I took this decision and I'm starting something the way I want to shape it. But then with that freedom also comes a lot of insecurity and like, will I ever get clients? Will they like what I do? Will anyone be interested in what I have to offer and my perspective on and my take on the way I see HR, the way I see therapy, the way I see coaching? How will I make it mine? And when you are self-employed especially, you really have to fight with yourself not to grab any piece of work that comes your way just because you want work. Or at least you need to find a balance, because as Yvonne already touched upon values, what is the point of working for yourself if then you're doing anything that comes your way?
Yeah.
And you're still dissatisfied because you're not using, you're not aligned with your core values. You're not working in the way you'd like to work. What is the point?
Yeah.
Might as well stay with any random employer and do things as they want you to do them and being told how to do things. Because yes, you don't have a boss, but your clients, of course, have needs and dictate
And is that a fear that you maybe had at the beginning, Ivon? Like, will you get clients?
Yeah.
Where will they come from?
Yeah, I still do. I still have the fear, like, since I'm just starting out, like, will they like the makeup I do? Will they like who I am? Will they feel comfortable with me? Will they recommend me on to other clients, etc.? Will new clients come in? So yeah, it's a whole, like, if I start thinking, I'll go into a rabbit hole, which I won't be able to come out of. So yeah, it's scary, but sometimes I say, listen, I know I'm good. I must be doing something right for people to ask me to do their makeup, you know? So I'll just go with the flow and just learn as I go, basically.
So something that's occurring to me in all of your stories, in different ways, you've all been really brave. Even at that point where you knew you had the calling, you felt trapped, you knew you needed to make that change. Was there any self-doubt?
lots of it.
I'm going to take that as a yes. Whoa.
My goodness. And can we tell the viewers that we did not practice this, but we all had the same expression?
Exactly.
It was a very genuine reaction.
Of course you doubt yourself.
Yeah.
Of course. I think we should get a bit of a window here, a bit of a moment to acknowledge how much we doubt ourselves, even when we do not have to. But this was a case, in our cases, where we really probably had to doubt ourselves a little bit, because you tend to get all these confirmations from the people around you that you are already very good where you are.
Right. Yeah.
Why do you want to move away from that?
Yeah.
Or why not stay put?
Exactly. It's same for me. Like, it was like, I built a career for 12 years. I know I am good at this. Am I throwing myself into something which I might not be good at, which I might fail at, you know? So yeah, it was super, super scary. Like, and for me, I didn't even know where I was going when I left my job, you know? So it was like, I'm taking a leap and I have no idea where this is going to take me. So it might turn out good, it might turn out really bad, you know? So yeah, it was super scary.
And what I felt is that when I started the psychotherapy course, like in HR, I had been working long enough to have built a network and to be a point of reference through the years. And I went from that to being like the new kid in the classroom, because we were quite a large cohort, and most of them were younger than me and came from the sort of psychology area, not from the corporate world.
Okay.
So like I was like more of a student than them. At least that's how I felt. So you go from being not an authority, but like established and autonomous in your role, and you sort of know that by then you have some capabilities in that area, to, as she said earlier, as Iona said earlier, fully exposed. You don't know anything. You keep asking questions, and I feel like I felt like I shrunk, and I then slowly. And then you start building and building and building, and it's that's scary. That's like very humbling, and it's a process you need to stay with. It's you really need to support yourself and make sure you're surrounded by the right people at that point.
And Iona, you're nodding a lot in agreement.
It's
there.
like she is literally in my head with all this.
She's a psychologist. She's supposed to be.
Yes, she probably is, isn't she? No, but she's absolutely right. And I think that is the one thing which can put a lot of women off when it comes to changing careers, because it can get very comfortable knowing that you are someone. And I don't mean to say that we want to be someone as in authority-wise, but the fact that you know your things, you know your job, you grow into it. So you've sort of established yourself as a mature individual who knows their job very well. And then all of a sudden, you're starting from scratch. And so you're the same age, you are the same individual, but you are suddenly with a different crowd. And you're not one of the people who knows things, but you are a newbie. As she said, you're a rookie all of a sudden. So you're going to have to be the one asking questions. You're going to have to be the junior someone now. If you were used to giving advice or mentoring someone, then all of a sudden you're going to have to be the one being mentored, the one who has to sort of take a step back and see how it's done first, you know? And that in itself is a little bit of a hurdle. It's a little bit of... you know, as Olivia said, you have to.
I don't know.
It's a
It's
mindset.
ego in the negative way. I mean, it's
No.
something you build something, and suddenly you're stepping into an area, and everything is new, and you're literally on step 1.
Yeah.
Precisely.
And in your previous field, you were, I don't know, step 10 out of 15
Exactly.
maybe.
Exactly.
And you're going back to that vulnerability,
Yeah,
like you
exactly.
said,
Of
like
course.
you were here, and it's not necessarily a step backwards, but it's a kind of sideways.
Yeah.
Because you're doing something new, you're pushing yourself,
Yes.
you are growing, but it's a whole new identity.
You need to, what I learned also through the inner process that goes along in studying psychotherapy, you need to allow yourself to be a learner. You need to really, really allow yourself, really to work on that and not see it as a negative thing, quite the opposite. You need to really strip yourself. And what I learned in the course, which stuck with me forever, still today, and will forever be there, is you form an opinion, you say something in class, and you get challenged, like, but why do you think that? So throughout the course, especially one particular tutor always used to ask us, you always need to ask yourself, why do you think what you think? And why do you believe what you believe? And there you start, at least in my area, in psychotherapy, you start understanding how many biases we have that we're unaware of, how much more judgmental you are than you think. That's when I remember her keep asking, but why do you think that? Why do you think that, I don't know, you would say, but it's not normal. And she'll be like, what makes you think it's not normal? Why is it not normal?
And what I like in actually kind of both your and Yvonne's stories, you both mentioned that moment of, whether it was a therapist or a coach or whoever, like that moment of clarity. You took that pause, and even you, Iona, like you took that pause and you had to sit down and really work out what it was that you wanted.
Yes.
And do you think that falls into, I'm trying to think what holds women back, what keeps them stuck? Why do many women not make that leap, be it either into their own business, as you have done, Olivia, or into a new role or a whole different new career? What are those type of things that hold women back? What keeps them stuck where they are?
I think it can be a variety of reasons, but sometimes even just life being so fast, you never have time to sit and think and like look at yourself. And I think sometimes even lifestyle issues that they might be dealing with, family, like whether they have the support to do it or not. Because in my case, I had the support, but I understand that other women might not have that support, you know? Sure. So, and even sometimes I think as women, we sort of don't give credit to ourselves of how much we're capable of doing.
Hell yeah.
So we'd rather sit back and just not take the leap because we're scared what might people think, what will happen if I go, if it goes wrong, you know? So some people tend to rather sit back rather than just taking the leap.
We are curators of culinary excellence. We stock all your favorite eateries with the finest ingredients and complement the best dishes with wines and spirits of distinction. We provide all the brands you love that you never knew you loved. Because the little things in life are the big things. Abrahams, for that something special.
And that's what certainly you, Iona, came, but it's been mentioned a few times of other people said to you, like, you're lucky, you're in a great place, like, why kind of throw this away? Why make a change? But you didn't listen to that.
I am inclined to think that if all women had the chance and the opportunity to do what we did, they would all do it. Because we know, and women, thankfully now, it's on a bit of a roll now. We know that women have what it takes most of the time. So it's no longer a matter of debating whether women are up for the job or not. It's not even that anymore. It's just that sometimes we hear it so many times that we should be grateful for what we have, which we are. Of course we are, you know. But sometimes these mantras, so to speak, they get repeated into our heads for so many times that we just don't question them anymore. So it's not like, you know, I was this super brave or had any superpower to sort of overcome anything which was beyond me, really. All I did was do my thing.
Yeah.
You know? So I would encourage all women, really, to do a little bit more of what they want or what they wish for or what they dream, rather than assume that there's a hurdle, because most often there isn't one. And
Or what they should do.
yes, that's another thing.
I think the hurdles are usually ourselves.
Yeah,
I think
and
when
that's
you
what I
ask
was going to say.
yourself, if you ask yourself, or at least even with clients in coaching, especially, sometimes I like to ask, like, if nothing was an issue, what would you choose to do?
Precisely.
Ooh, it's like that Sheryl
Yes.
Sandberg quote,
Yes.
isn't it? If you knew you couldn't fail, what
Exactly.
would
What
you
did
do?
you
Yes.
do?
Exactly.
Yes.
Yes.
But there you get the clarity, which we are scared to.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we're even scared to think about what we want to do, because deep inside you say, what's the point of thinking about it? I'm not going to do it anyway. So you're scared to even go there
Just
from
not
a
to get
thought
hurt,
process
sort
point
of.
of view.
Or as you said, Yvonne, what will other people think?
Yeah.
Exactly. The shame, I think.
Yeah.
But that is why
exactly.
we should not portray this as something unreachable, you know? And that is why I told you I do not really like to think of myself as the first women helicopter pilot or the first whatever, the only whatever. Because the more we put it up there, the more unreachable it's going to seem for the women out there. It might not make it any more unreachable in real terms, but it's going to be questioned more. And it's going to be, there's probably going to be more women who think that it's not for them. And that is not what we want, is it?
Absolutely not.
So,
No, no,
you know,
no.
you don't have to be the first woman helicopter pilot to be a successful woman in life. You don't have to be the first anything.
Yeah.
You know? So
You just got to do it your way.
I think,
Precisely.
adding to what Iona's saying, in my opinion, one of the very first steps you need to go inward, not outward.
Yeah.
And I think the first thing you need to go when you want to go inward is define what success means to you.
Yes.
Because there are as many versions of successes as there are people alive.
Absolutely. This is one of my favorite topics that I debate with a friend of mine. And it's a very, as you say, it's a very individual thing.
It
It's
is.
not necessarily just about money or the paycheck or what your
Not at
title
all.
is or...
Some people are driven by that, and there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong. So
Nope.
some people are driven by the title and by the status that gives them. And if they're aiming to achieve that and they're climbing up that ladder and they're really happy, it's fine. That's how it should be. But for others, it's not. For others, it's maybe serving people. For others, it's like using their creative minds to make us feel all better about ourselves.
Or as you've
So-
mentioned, connection. Connection
Exactly.
is
Yes.
clearly
Yes.
very important to you, and you're seeing the difference you make
Yes.
daily in the lives of your clients.
Yes. Like others have
beautiful.
made a difference in mine. I drew a lot of inspiration from my own journey in therapy. And I probably that's what also, my therapist was the one to tell me, like, you should go for this. And that's what I drew as well a lot from, and still do. The impact she's had in my life with these empowering, with these questions, and with the way she makes it like, but why? But why not? Why this? And I'm like, because it's too scary, because no one leaves this kind of job. It's like, but why? And this questioning that, as Ivon said, unless we are deliberate about it, we never have the time to do. No one has the time to stop and reflect unless we want to do that and you want to make time for that.
So that pause to get that clarity, that's like one trick, one tip. What other mindset things, especially, Olivia, would you say that people need to think about, or what can help them? So somebody is at home listening to this or watching this. They are at that point in their life. They are either burnt out, they are feeling that calling, or they are feeling stuck and they want to make that change. What can they do to help themselves take that leap? And I think we've all agreed so far, like it is a leap and you are going to need bravery. But if you're not to be held back by either your own fears, your own self-doubts, or the opinions of others, what can you do to overcome that, to jump off that cliff?
First, the thinking you mentioned, it's a process, and this can take time. So it's not going to be like you sit one day with a tea or with wine or whatever you fancy, and after half an hour, ooh, we have the idea. Exactly, like grab the wine. Yes, exactly.
Ladies, cheers.
Yeah, cheers. It might help. But I would say, if someone's listening now, I hope many people are listening, getting very honest on an inner level. Really, the first things you need to understand, both as Iona and Ivon have mentioned, and myself, you really need to get honest, brutally honest with yourself about what you're tolerating, what you're scared to go for. You cannot do any of what we've done and millions of other women have done without being brutally honest with yourself, until you're going to continue making excuses like, no, I'm going to stay working here because it's comfortable. That's one truth, but there's more than one truth. It's comfortable, and it's also limiting, and it's also impeding me from finding the time to do this or that. So the first step is to get brutally honest and get yourself in a space where you're calling everything by its name. In a grateful way, like I'm grateful to all the experiences I've had. I understand what I've learned from them, and I take that with me onto the next stage or the next phase that I decide to go for. But you need to really, really get to a point where you are able to be honest with yourself.
One of my heroes is Ray Dalio. He's a hedge fund manager in America, and he talks about a similar concept of a radical honesty.
Yes.
And again, it's not easy.
No, it's very scary, actually.
Yeah.
Because then once you see it, once you start, that's why it's scary. And that's why many times we're scared to think about what we might do. Because once you say it out loud, or even like internally loud just for you to hear it, you're like, so am I just going to let it stay there now? Exactly. I'm not going to pursue it. Yeah. So, once you're radically honest with yourself, then you have to do something about it. You're either going to deliberately decide not to go after it.
Which is
also an option.
Maybe.
Yes, exactly. But there's a process there too. You need to be mindful and be intentional that this is something I've decided to let go in favor of this because blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So I would also say being honest, and then you need to be intentional about whichever way you go.
Yeah. I'm really intrigued because, Iona, how did you make that decision? Because the other ladies have said, they spoke to people, there was a therapist, there was a coach. How did you make that decision?
Mind you, I did speak to people as well. I spoke to a lot of people. I have a support system behind my back as well, which I'm very grateful for, because as in the case of both women here, I would probably not be halfway through where I am at the moment without them. So I did ask for advice. And I think, speaking for myself here, I'm a person who would always love to see the whole picture. So I try not to sort of mystify things in my head, because I always knew there's the glittery part of the story and not the not so glittery part of things. So in the process, I think my process involved a lot of being realistic. So
that's not the glittery part.
No. Yes, unfortunately it's not. But that is the part where I had said, I had to come to terms with knowing that the operational part of things would have me away from home for a lot of hours.
Yeah.
It had me away from home for 2.5 years to even get the job first, because
Wow.
I had to relocate to get my piloting course, because it was not a training which I could do in Malta. So of course there's always a lot of reckoning. I have a stable relationship. Is this going to be healthy for it? Of course it's not healthy for it. So there's a lot of sacrifice that goes in there that you are fully aware of, which makes it even more difficult, because it's like, what you're walking into, woman.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a I don't know how to put it into words, but there's a lot of give and take that you have to do in your head. There's a lot of reckoning with reality that you have to do. But then again, I think my point of departure always is, I've done this already. I've chosen my career once, and that went very well for me. I took a leap once, and that went well as well. I mean, you have to be a little bit positive at the end. You have to know when, and I'm a firm believer of my body and my mind will tell me when I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I don't know how to explain this. I hope, don't ask me about the science of it. I'm not sure how it works.
It's almost like a gut or an intuition thing.
I'm not telling people to, just take these massive leaps of faith without, as I said, there was a lot of reckoning that I had to do myself. But then there comes a time where you can't do any more scientific research, where you can't do any more reckoning and calculations. You just have to know that you're going to try this. Yeah. And when you allow yourself to go with the process of, okay, I'm going to go for it, I'm going to trust myself first and foremost, because that's, I think, the most important thing. You have to know, you probably won't know that you will be the best student, but you will know that you will do your best. And I think that makes it good enough to try,
Yes.
And then you just go for it. And then you just trust the process, trust yourself, be aware of the realities, as I said, be aware of the things that could go wrong, be aware of the things that you might not feel comfortable doing, which are like 101 million in my case, But you know that you will face them, you will probably fail at some. Again, countless experience in my case, things I've failed at, things I've done and realized, I'm not comfortable doing this,
But you did have a track record, like you say, that you'd proved to yourself things before. So there's a certain kind of self-confidence there. And Ivon, I want to come to you. Do you resonate with that trust? Was that a crucial element for you? Like you just actually, I'm just going to back myself. I'm just going to trust this works out. And yes, it's scary, but let's do it anyway.
At first, it wasn't easy. Like a lot of negative thoughts start coming in. Like, what if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? And then I stopped and I said, what if it fails? I'll find another job. I'll find something else. We'll figure it out. What's the worst case scenario that can happen? I'll go somewhere and work something different, And that sort of put my mind at rest, that then I can go. I knew I was sort of capable. I'm capable of doing it, but the fear that you're not good enough is always at the back of your mind, So that is what, when panic strikes, that is what I always say. Worst case scenario, we'll find something else. You'll figure it out. You've always made it work.
That relates to what you're saying, Olivia, about kind of that radical honesty. Actually, if you face what that worst case scenario really is, then maybe that fear dissolves a bit.
Because as Iona said, we're not here to tell people, get excited, drop everything you're doing and just go for it. That's why earlier I mentioned there's a process. Yeah. And I think Iona touched on a very important point, which is very close to my heart as well, the body-mind connection. Because we get over in our heads, thinking, which is important to think. But if you do stop to feel what your thoughts are, the gut is the second brain, as we know through science. So if you listen to that, it doesn't mean if your gut says go for it, you just resign overnight without any support, without any plan.
Yeah.
But that's your sign, and that's where you get, again, honest with yourself and say, okay, I really want this. I really want to make it work. I have no idea how. But step by step, I'm going to start. And then you can start the process of, okay, like, so with whom should I be having conversations? Is the circle of people I choose to be around me the right one for this? Would they support me on a mental, psychological, logistical, operational level?
Emotional, yeah.
Emotional. Be prepared that it's an emotional journey as much as it is intellectual, physical, whatever it entails. As she mentioned, as well as Iona mentioned, setbacks are definitely part of it.
Right.
And with a confidence which was already fragile, being vulnerable again, I think it's very important to be aware of that setbacks will be part of it, but your mindset is that setbacks are lessons. I think many famous and like successful people say that they learned more through their failures than they did from their successes. And in my case, in my life, it's been the same as well.
So it's about acknowledging that those setbacks will be there.
Yes.
It's not like you switch and it's like straight line to
Exactly.
new success career and happy days.
No, it will not be like
It's
that.
being prepared. And how can you prepare yourself for those setbacks, those obstacles, those challenges that will come?
I think you can't really prepare, to be honest. I think you need to, when they happen, remind yourself what you need. You need to speak to a professional. You need to speak to your friend. That's why the support system is very important, and that should be composed from different people. Professional support, friend support, maybe family. It should be quite a mix of people. Because at that point, it's where you will remind yourself and they'll remind you as well, like about your capabilities. Someone will remind you, okay, so what do you learn from this? Because you might be quite emotional, quite overwhelmed at that point. That's why it's a whole web of things that go together.
Yeah. And sometimes you need that external or that objective perspective because you were too close to that.
Yes, you will.
Iona, is there a specific kind of obstacle or setback that you've overcome? And if so, how did you do it?
Yes, there was a very in-your-face one for me in my formation course, for instance, to become a military officer in the first place. Back then, I had not really done stuff in life which sort of highlighted my weaknesses before. Because, being at university and whatnot, you always sort of get a choice on what to focus on, which puts you automatically on an easy track. Whereas when you're in military training, you have absolutely no choice. There's all of it is a learning curve. Yeah. So it's all intended to build you up, of course. But in the process, bits and pieces of you get broken away and then remolded in a different shape altogether, And that was a very difficult process for me. The number of things I failed at during my military training was unheard of before. I had so many instances where I said, God, I'm also bad at this. Now I have to face this as well. This sucks, this is, I don't like it. And throughout all of this, you're being watched by your peers. There's people next to you who can hear you moan and pant because you're out of breath. The equipment is terrible, doesn't fit you well because you're 4 inches too short. I've said this already countless times, because it's something which stuck with me. Because as a Maltese woman training with the Irish Defence Forces, for instance, that was that in itself. That was already a big hurdle because the environment isn't right, the cold isn't right, the equipment isn't right. You're in a foreign country. Yeah. So, it's sort of, that already is sort of like a disadvantage. And of course, I'm not here to sort of mope about it at all. But it really clicked. It really put me in a situation where I had to tell myself, okay, so now comes a time in life where you just have to grind through it, where you just have to grit your teeth, plod on, no matter how muddy or miserable it gets. This is something that you just have to go through. And then you realize, once you sort of make peace with that, and you just say, okay, this is an ugly moment in life. Then you realize that it's not always very ugly, and it's not only ever bad. There's beautiful things that come with it, and then you start to see the little bit of good that comes out from an experience which was really bad in your eyes, and you learn from it, as Olivia said. So, and then it makes you grow, because you realize that no matter how much you sort of, how bad a situation seems, it never is too bad.
No.
There's always some sort of positive thing that you can get out of it. And it also makes you very much mature in terms of how much you complain.
Right.
Then when you've gone through this, and it doesn't have to be military training at all, but when you get a setback, as Olivia said, you tend to complain less if you know that you have what it takes to, just up and go,
And also
Just do it.
that it's not permanent. I think when
Yes.
we get these things and we get the knock, it can feel like, oh my God, it's the end of the world. But actually, this too shall pass, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Get up tomorrow
Yes.
and try again.
Yes.
And have you had those moments, Ivon?
Not big, but small moments where I would be like for example, in the year where I sobbed, I was like, how did I come to this? I was doing my master's. I was really, how did I end up? Nowadays, I laugh about it, I call it my mini midlife crisis at the age of 33. But back then, it was like, how did I end up here, And I started, it's sort of mind over matter. You will get out of this. This is a learning curve. In 10 years' time, this would have taught you something.
Yeah.
So that is how I go through even if there is something like a look I can't get or something. Wake up, tomorrow you'll try again, you'll figure it out, you'll find your way, and you'll get there. And it teaches you sort of, even I'm starting a business, I'm learning different things I didn't know, which is exciting because it's not like learning sitting down, but it's also scary. What if I won't be able to do this, But the thing I tell myself is I sit back, stop, rest, then get back at it again tomorrow and figure it out. Tomorrow you'll be rested, you will be able to figure it out.
And what I'm hearing, Olivia, from this is that self-talk.
Yes.
We need to be gentle and supportive and compassionate with ourselves, right, through this whole process, because it's all new and there are challenges and there's things we've never done before. My background was investment banking and now I'm doing something entirely different. And I had that whole identity crisis at the time, but how you speak to yourself is really important, right?
Yes, the inner critic would probably be having a feast, not probably like feasting. Yes, there's so much I can tell this brain now. It will go up, of course, the inner criticism, because you're out of your comfort zone. You've gone from a point of reference to being a newbie student. There's so much you don't know now versus before. There was a lot that you know and a little bit that you're learning. So that's where, again, both being by yourself and focusing on your inner chatter and catching it when it's becoming too negative and having something to rebate back. That, okay, as Iona said, like, I've done this before, so bringing up the experiences that were tough, maybe in a different scenario, in a completely different setting, but reminding yourself that you've done tough things before and you've found your way and you're going to do that again. And not believing everything you think is very important. Yeah. It's something I learned along the way, the hard way, like everybody else. Because not everything you think is true. Most of the time, as Ivon is explaining this moment of, will I do this, will I do not? Most probably like 90% of what you're thinking there is not true.
Exactly.
So Dr. Joe Dispenza said that at a retreat I went on. He said, don't believe your thoughts, especially at 4 a.m. in the morning.
Exactly.
Exactly. Stuck with me for years and years.
Yeah,
because then when you're objective or when you're sitting with someone and you're bouncing off your thoughts, you realize it's not that bad after all, or I've learned this, or it's never that bad usually, because when you're caught in a spiraling
Yes.
situation,
We
it will
tend
get
to
out
be
of hand.
our worst
Oh,
critics,
yeah.
our
Oh,
own
yeah.
worst critics. For instance, in my case, if I might, I was never aware that I can be, in certain instances, a slow learner. And to me, this came as a huge blow, under the belt, really, because it was something I would not want to accept about myself. Because, as I said, doing all the things I was comfortable with growing up, getting your good grades, behaving, because that's how a good student should be, behaving and earning your grades. And then once you earn them, then you move on. Piloting really put it out there for me. And truth be told, I had been given hints when I was doing other things, like, for instance, diving and all these outdoorsy things that I set, to do. I started to realize that where practical things come, where you're doing something that you are using both your mind and your body and you're coordinating, I found that I needed more time than other people, than my peers, than what I myself thought. So I ended up sort of thinking all the time that I'm failing, or I am taking too long to learn this, or I am not as good as they are. And then what happens? Then you start comparing yourself to others, guilty as charged,
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you tend to put yourself as your own failing yardstick,
Yeah.
instead of counting your successes, or instead of saying, okay, I was here yesterday and I'm here today, so I got a little bit of progress put in. Instead of doing that, you start telling yourself, maybe you shouldn't have done this, maybe you shouldn't have set yourself to trying to reach such a high goal, because maybe you're not up for it, and it can get very ugly from there.
Yeah.
So please don't do it.
I think one of the most basic things in dealing with the inner critic that works, but you need to remind yourself of this very often, is to speak to yourself as you would speak to a friend.
Yep.
Yeah.
When I
That's
catch
beautiful.
myself and I do this, I have this particular friend in mind. I'll go like, would I tell her that? No. What I would be telling her instead. And I try to speak to myself like that. So if you could remember that.
I'm keeping a mental note.
That's really wonderful advice, as is the don't compare yourself or compare yourself to where you were, not to what everybody else is doing, because you're on your own track.
It will not be easy, because we tend to do it, especially being women in a male-dominated environment. It can get very... it can be a bit daunting, sort of, to know that you are not the best, because you might be scared that people are going to say you are not the best because you're a woman, whereas it has absolutely nothing to do with being a woman. It's just that we have all different thresholds and different standards and different capabilities even, So with all these success stories in our heads, we have to put it out there that being successful is not necessarily being the best out of
No.
people, out of a
if
group
I
of
may,
people,
something like with social media nowadays, you see a lot of successes, etc. And then you start comparing yourself and you expect yourself to reach that threshold like that person did. When in reality, you are a different person, you bring something different to the table, and you have to accept that this is you and this is your journey, and that is not your journey, that is theirs, And it can get scary when you start comparing.
We could go down a whole little rabbit hole on social media and how that's not reality, or that's definitely not every day. But let's leave the listeners and the viewers with one piece of advice. What would you like them to take away from this conversation, Ivon?
So for me is believe in yourself and take the leap. Whether it's small or big, no matter how big the step is, go for it.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Olivia?
I think if someone hearing us is feeling stuck or insecure whether to go forward or not with an idea, I'd invite them to think, by saying yes to this, comfort or whatever, what am I saying no to? I didn't come up with this. I read it somewhere years ago, and it really helps me throughout the years. And I really keep it in mind.
So by saying yes to something, you're
Opportunity
saying no.
cost.
Yeah.
You know that well enough.
Absolutely.
So whenever we say yes to something, automatically we're saying no to something else. Time is finite. Nothing is infinite. So yes, by saying yes to the comfort, to the secure job, to this happiness, what am I saying no to? And if what you're saying no to, you're fine saying no to that, then there's your decision, you stay. But if what you're saying no to seems like too big of an ask to say no to, then you need to get down the brutal honesty thing and go from there.
Yeah, you could be saying no to opportunities and fulfilling your heart and fulfilling your dreams. Ooh, I like that a lot. Iona, how about you?
Right. I think that a lot of women, if they get the opportunity, would ask themselves, now what? Or what next? Mm-hmm. I do that a lot. I think I do that too much for my own liking because it always takes me somewhere and doesn't allow me to stay put.
But it keeps it exciting.
Yes, very, very. But as I said earlier, perhaps it's not for everyone to just take a leap. It's not for everyone to just move on. If you decide, when you ask yourself what next, if your answer is, this is exactly where I want to be, and this is where I want to, this is what I want to be doing at this moment in time, then perhaps ask yourself what next a few years down the line or a little bit later. If when you answer yourself, you tend to want to be looking somewhere else than where you are and what you are doing, then perhaps you should ask yourself the next question. Then, okay, if what next is making me look here or there, then how do I want myself to go there? Or do I even imagine myself doing this in the future, in the long run? And perhaps it's not about, taking this magical leap of faith. Perhaps it won't even be a leap of faith. Perhaps it will just be a little bit like in Olivia's case. It will be an evolution. It will be a growth that you can do. And if that is successful enough, then why not? You are already at a very good place, aren't you?
Exactly.
So
it's very...
go bit by bit.
Yeah, go bit by bit. It's very individual. Well, what's next for me, ladies, is to cheers to that wonderful conversation.
Cheers.
Thank you.
I can't reach that far.
Cheers, Olivia.